Nia Carter sat in a five-star restaurant drinking her freshly made juice. She didn't offend anyone. She did nothing wrong. They still humiliated her. What happened next will shake you. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single comment. Like this story if you believe truth deserves to win. Subscribe because this is only the beginning. More stories like this are coming. And if you have someone in your life who needs the story today, send it to them. Let me take you back a little. Nia Carter was breathtaking. Tonight was not about business. Tonight was about Nia. You're staring, she said, reaching across the white tablecloth to tap his hand. I'm allowed, he said. You're my wife. She smiled. You say that like it's a privilege. It is, he said, and he meant it in the way men mean things when they're not performing for anyone. They had been married for 6 years. No children yet. That was a conversation still in progress, still tender, still held between them with care. But their marriage was one of those rare ones that still had electricity in it. That still had us in it. Date nights weren't a chore for them. They were something they protected. Their drinks had arrived 10 minutes ago. A fresh mango and passion fruit juice blend, sweating beautifully in tall glasses, with crushed ice and a sprig of mint. Nia had taken one sip and closed her eyes like she was receiving something. They were halfway through a conversation about whether they should take a trip to Ghana this summer when Marcus's phone buzzed against the table. He glanced at it. His expression shifted, just slightly, the way it did when business demanded his attention. I'm sorry, he said, already standing. It's Harrington. The London deal. Nia waved her hand gently. Go. I'll be here with my juice. He kissed her on the forehead and walked toward the entrance, already lifting the phone to his ear. She watched him go with a soft smile, then turned back to her juice, swirling the straw, letting her eyes drift around the restaurant. It was a full evening, couples at nearly every table, soft piano music threading through the air, the occasional clink of glasses. She was content. She was safe. She was wrong about that last part. The door swung open hard enough that several heads turned. 3 police officers walked in. Not the kind of walking that says, we're here to help. The kind that says we own whatever room we enter. They were in uniform, hands resting deliberately near their belts, eyes moving across the restaurant with that particular sweep, the kind that isn't looking for a threat, but looking for a target. The one in front was the tallest. His name tag said Briggs. He had pale eyes that moved slowly, like a man who had never been told no. He stopped in the center of the restaurant floor and looked around. Then he said it. He said it loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Everyone with black skin, stand up. Right now. The room went cold. A woman at the next table gasped. A waiter froze near the kitchen entrance. Several black diners looked at each other in disbelief, then began to slowly, painfully, rise from their seats. Because that is what fear does. Fear makes people stand up when they should be allowed to sit. Nia did not stand. She set her juice down carefully. She pressed her hands flat on the table. And she sat very, very still. Briggs's eyes found her. He walked over slowly, the other 2 officers falling in behind him like shadows. Mom. His voice was ice. I said stand up. Nia looked up at him. Her voice was steady. I heard what you said. I'm not standing. I haven't done anything wrong. Something moved through Briggs's face. Not embarrassment. Not reconsideration. Something uglier than both of those. Kneel down then. No. The words sat in the air between them like a stone dropped in still water. Every person in that restaurant felt the ripples. I am a customer in this restaurant, Nia said, her voice controlled but her eyes blazing. I am sitting here with my husband. I have broken no law. I will not kneel for you. Briggs reached out and picked up her glass of juice. And he poured it over her head. The gasp in that restaurant was collective. The cold liquid cascaded down Nia's natural hair, over her gold earrings, soaking into the shoulders of her red dress. She sat there for one terrible second as the juice dripped off her chin and onto the white tablecloth. Then she stood. How dare you? The slap came fast. Open-handed, across her cheek. Briggs's palm connecting with Nia Carter's face in a room full of witnesses, in a fine restaurant, on a Thursday evening. The sound of it echoed. Nia's head turned with the force of it. She grabbed the table. Her hand was shaking. Her whole body was shaking. Not from weakness, from the effort it was taking to hold herself together. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Then the door opened again. Marcus Carter walked back in, his phone still in his hand, mid-sentence with London. He saw his wife standing, juice running down her face, a red mark already forming on her cheek, 3 uniformed police officers standing over her like a wall. His phone dropped to his side. "What is going on?" His voice was low. Dangerously low. "Stay back, sir," one of the officers said, stepping toward him. "This doesn't concern you. That is my wife." Marcus moved forward, not aggressively, but with the unmistakable energy of a man who has arrived at his absolute limit. "She's learning a lesson," Briggs said calmly. "And you don't want to join her. You put your hand on my wife." Marcus's voice cracked just slightly on the word wife. Just slightly. But everyone in that room heard it. "Sir, one more word, and you're going in cuffs." Marcus stepped beside Nia, placing himself between her and the officers. She grabbed his arm. He could feel her trembling. The second officer moved toward her again, his hand already raised. Marcus caught his wrist. "Not my wife," Marcus said, his voice quiet but absolute. "Not while I am standing here. Not today. Not ever." The officer yanked back, shoving Marcus hard in the chest. Marcus stumbled back a step, but did not fall. He straightened. He did not swing. He did not grab. He stood there, chest heaving, every muscle in his body coiled, and chose not to fight. Because he knew something those officers clearly did not. He knew that right now, in this restaurant, the world was watching. What nobody knew yet, not Marcus, not the officers, not even Nia, was that everything had just been recorded. Every second of it. The officers began to realize the room was too quiet, too witnessful. They looked at each other. Then something strange happened. A couple at a table near the window, a man and woman, white, elegantly dressed, stood up and walked toward Marcus. The woman pressed a hand to her chest, and the man extended his hand. "Mr. Carter," the man said, head slightly dipped in respect. "We are so sorry. Are you all right? Is Mrs. Carter all right?" The officer stiffened. "Mr. Carter?" Briggs repeated. "Marcus Carter," the woman said quietly, her voice carrying. "You just assaulted the wife of Marcus Carter." The name meant nothing to the officers in that moment. It would mean everything to them very soon. Briggs straightened his uniform. He looked at his colleagues. And then the 3 of them did something that would later define their character entirely. They walked out. And they took out their phones before the door, even closed behind them. Marcus pulled Nia close, his big hands cradling the side of her face, where the mark still burned. "I've got you," he said. She was not crying. Nia Carter refused to cry in that restaurant. She would save the tears for later, in the car, with her head on his shoulder, where no one could use them against her. He held her hand, walked her to the car, and drove home. Neither of them knew that the worst of this night was only just beginning. The first video appeared at 11:47 p.m. Marcus was in the kitchen making Nia a cup of tea. She had showered twice, changed into comfortable clothes, and was sitting on the couch with her knees pulled to her chest, still quiet in a way that frightened him. Not a broken quiet. A furious one. The kind that lives just below the surface, looking for the right moment to become something else. His phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it didn't stop. He set the tea down and picked it up. The notifications were coming in like water through a cracked dam. Instagram tags, Twitter mentions, WhatsApp messages from numbers he didn't recognize. All directing him to the same thing. He pressed play. The video opened mid-drama. What it showed, or rather, what it carefully chose to show, was Marcus grabbing an officer's wrist. Then the officer stumbling. Then what looked, in the shaky, poorly lit, selectively framed footage, like a powerful man physically overpowering a police officer. Officer Briggs's voice came over the video in a narration he had clearly recorded separately, calm, and injured sounding. We responded to a disturbance at Aurelio's restaurant tonight and were assaulted by a well-known businessman. This man used his wealth and physical size to intimidate and assault officers of the law. No one is above the law. No one. The caption read, "Billionaire attacks cops. Share before it gets deleted." It had 200,000 views. Marcus stared at the screen until his vision blurred. He scrolled through the comments. Of course, money makes him think he can do whatever he wants. Disgusting. Privilege at its worst. He should be in jail right now. Why are we not surprised? Rich people think they're untouchable. He tore their uniform? Lock him up. He scrolled further. Further. Searching. The way you search desperately for a voice of reason in a burning room. Occasionally, he found one. One comment that said, "Wait, what was happening before this?" Another that said, "Something feels off about this video." But those comments were buried, crushed under thousands of others. He went to the second video. Briggs again, this time sitting in what appeared to be a parking lot, holding his collar, showing a small tear in the fabric. "This man tore my uniform. He put his hands on me and my fellow officers. We have a duty to protect the public, and this is what we face. We're asking the public to hold people like this accountable." 43,000 comments. Marcus put the phone down on the kitchen counter. He stood in his own kitchen, in his own home, in the house he had built from nothing, and he pressed both hands flat on the cold granite and breathed through his nose. Long, slow. The way his mother had taught him when he was a boy, and the world was doing things to him that it had no right to do. Nia appeared in the doorway. She had seen it already. He could tell from her face. The way it had gone very still. "How bad?" she asked. He turned to look at her. The mark on her cheek had deepened to a bruise. His jaw tightened looking at it. "Bad," he said. She walked to him, and he wrapped his arms around her. She pressed her face into his chest, and for a moment they just stood there in the kitchen in the silence of a house that had always felt like safety and now felt smaller, somehow. Like the walls had moved in while they weren't looking. "People believe them?" she asked. "A lot of people," he said. She pulled back and looked at him. "Then we go live. Tonight. Right now. We tell people what actually happened." He nodded. He wanted to protect her from more exposure. He wanted to say, "Let's wait." But Nia was already reaching for her phone, already pulling her hair into a quick bun, already lifting her chin. They sat on the couch together and went live. Marcus spoke first, his voice measured, detailed, precise. He told them about the evening, about the phone call, about walking back and to find his wife drenched in juice, a burning mark on her face. He told them about catching the officer's wrist, not in aggression, but in protection. He told them what the officer had been about to do. Nia spoke next. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright, with something barely held. She described what it felt like to sit in that restaurant while a man in a uniform told her to kneel. She described the cold juice running down her face. She described the slap. She pulled her hair back and tilted her face toward the camera. The bruise was visible. The comments came fast. Some believed them immediately. Some said it was clearly a performance. Some said the bruise was fake. Some said the real video told the real story. Some said that no matter what the police had done, you didn't put your hands on an officer. Some said Marcus was using his wealth to manipulate public opinion. The live video got 3 million views. But the officer's video had 10. Marcus watched the ratio in silence. He refreshed the page. He read comment after comment from people who had decided, with complete confidence and no evidence beyond a 17-second clip, that he was guilty, that he was arrogant, that he was the kind of man who thought money gave him the right to push people around. One comment stayed with him longer than the rest. It came from an account with over 200,000 followers, a man who wrote long threads about justice and community. He had written, "Whatever the police did, Marcus Carter had no right to get physical. The moment a wealthy man starts grabbing officers, he becomes the aggressor. His wife's tears don't change that. His billions don't change that. He is not the victim here. The law is." It had been retweeted 40,000 times. Marcus set the phone down again. Nia was already asleep, exhausted and drained, her head on a pillow at the end of the couch. He sat beside her and looked at her face. At the bruise. At the woman who had sat in that restaurant and refused to kneel and paid for it with the sting of a hand across her cheek. He thought about his mother. How she used to say, "Marcus, the truth is never loud enough in the beginning. You have to be patient with it." He had always believed that. He had built his whole life on the idea that if you did things right, if you were honest, if you worked hard, the world would eventually see you clearly. That belief, for the first time in his adult life, felt fragile. He sat in the dark and watched his wife breathe and tried to hold on to it. Monday morning came with 5 missed calls. Marcus was already awake when his phone lit up at 6:14 a.m. He hadn't slept properly since Thursday. He'd spent the weekend cycling between refreshing social media and forcing himself to stop, between trying to answer messages and realizing there were too many to answer, between believing the truth would come out and genuinely, quietly terrifying himself that it wouldn't. He called his assistant, David, back first. David's voice had that particular quality of someone trying to deliver bad news with professional neutrality and not quite pulling it off. "The Meridian Group called this morning," David said. "Meridian?" Marcus closed his eyes. The Meridian contract was an 18-month negotiation. A logistics partnership worth $260 million, the biggest deal his company had ever been positioned to close. They had shaken hands. They had been, as of last week, days from signing. And, Marcus said, "They've decided to go in a different direction." Those were their exact words, sir. A different direction. They said they wanted to inform you directly, but they sent it through me. The pause that followed was both of them understanding what that meant. A company doesn't spend 18 months building toward a deal and then redirect it in a weekend unless something changes. Something external changes. Something they see on the internet. What reason did they give? Marcus asked, though he already knew. They said they had concerns about recent public events and felt the reputational climate made it difficult to proceed at this time. Marcus pressed the phone harder against his ear. "Send me the letter." He had it in 30 seconds. Corporate language, carefully legal, not a single explicit mention of the videos. But you didn't need a lawyer to read between those lines. He put the phone down and sat at his desk and stared at the wall of his home office, the wall where he kept nothing decorative, only a whiteboard, because Marcus was the kind of man who needed to see his thinking laid out in front of him to trust it. The whiteboard was blank. By 9 a.m., 3 more calls had come in. The Foster infrastructure deal, pulled. The partnership with Elgin Capital, paused indefinitely. A speaking engagement at a leadership summit in Dubai, quietly cancelled. An apologetic email from the organizer explaining they felt the timing was sensitive. His business manager, a sharp woman named Priscilla, who had worked with him for 9 years, called at 10. "Marcus," she said. And something in the way she said his first name told him she was not going to cushion this. "We need to talk about what this is doing to the portfolio." "Tell me." 3 flagship deals gone in 72 hours. I'm getting calls from 2 other partners who are asking questions. One of them told me directly that their board had seen the videos and was nervous about the association. "The stock in your publicly traded subsidiary dropped 4 points this morning. That's not catastrophic, but it's a signal." She paused. "And Marcus, the comment sections on your business pages. The reviews. Someone has organized a campaign. I don't know if it's connected to the officers, but it looks organized." Marcus leaned back in his chair. He was quiet. "Priscilla," he said finally. "I didn't tear those uniforms. I didn't attack anyone." "I know that," she said. "I believe you completely. But Marcus, you and I both know it doesn't matter what I believe right now. It matters what their boards believe. It matters what their investors believe. And right now they're looking at a video of a very large man grabbing a police officer, and they're deciding it's easier to walk away than to wait for the full story." He thanked her and ended the call. He went downstairs. Nia was at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, her laptop open, reading. She looked up when he came in. She could read his face the way people learn to read weather. "How many?" she asked. "4 deals," he said. "Maybe more." Her face crumpled for just a second. Just 1 second. Then she pulled it back the way Nia always did. She was not a woman who fell apart. She was a woman who held her pain with both hands and decided what to do with it. "This is their fault," she said quietly. "Briggs and those men. This is what they did." "I know. And they're out there," she said, letting it happen, maybe enjoying it. Marcus poured himself a coffee and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden. It was a beautiful spring morning, the kind of morning that felt wrong to be suffering through. He thought about how many times he had stood at that window and felt grateful. For the house. For the garden. For the life. For the fact that a boy from a 2-bedroom apartment in Atlanta had somehow built something this solid. He thought about how quickly solid could become uncertain. That afternoon, he went to his office building downtown for the first time since the incident. He needed to speak to his team, to stabilize what he could, to be physically present in a way that video calls couldn't replicate. He drove himself. He parked in the garage, took the elevator up, and walked through the lobby of his own company. A receptionist he had never seen before, new hire, clearly didn't know who he was, looked up from her desk. Then a woman in the waiting area recognized him. She pointed. She said something to the man beside her. The man looked over. He didn't smile. He just looked. Marcus had been in this lobby 100 times. He had walked through it as the man who built it. Today, for the first time, he felt like he was walking through it under examination. Like the walls were watching him and hadn't decided yet. He took the stairs instead of the main elevator. By the end of the day, 2 more partners had called with variations of the same message. Pausing. Reassessing. Not the right time. He drove home in silence. Nia had cooked dinner. She always cooked when things were bad. It was the way she held on to normal. They ate. They talked about other things, small things, deliberate things. They were protecting each other the way long married people do, filling the air with safe words so the dangerous ones don't get too loud. But after dinner, when the plates were cleared and the house was quiet, Marcus sat in his study and pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down, by hand, everything he had lost in 4 days. $260 million in contracts. His public reputation. His wife's sense of safety. His own sense of it. He folded the paper and put it in his desk drawer. Then he picked up his phone and found Officer Briggs's public profile online. He looked at it for a long time. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would try to end this the quiet way. The reasonable way. He would go to them himself. He would ask them to do the right thing. He still believed, then, that people could be appealed to. He would learn otherwise very soon. He drove himself. No driver. No security. No assistant. Marcus had debated this for 2 hours the previous night, going back and forth with Nia about whether to bring legal counsel, whether to make it official, whether to approach through channels. But his gut told him to go alone. To make it human. To sit across from these men and speak to them without the armor of lawyers and without the aggression of accusation. He believed still that there was a version of a person inside Officer Briggs that understood right from wrong. He had been wrong about people before. Briggs lived in a townhouse in a quiet suburb. Marcus had found the address through a mutual contact, a retired officer who knew the department. He sat in his car for 5 minutes outside before he got out. He knocked. Briggs opened the door in jeans and a t-shirt, coffee mug in hand, and when he saw Marcus standing on his porch, something crossed his face that was quick and complicated. Surprise. Satisfaction. And something that might have been, in a different man, shame. "Mr. Carter," Briggs said. "I'd like to talk," Marcus said. "That's all. Just talk." Briggs stepped aside. Marcus walked in. The other 2 officers, Holt and Devers, were already there. Marcus noticed this. He understood then that they had been expecting something. Maybe not him specifically, but something. They were ready. He sat in a chair across from the 3 of them on the couch. He placed his hands on his knees. He kept his voice level and his posture open. "I'd like you to take the videos down," he said. "And I'd like you to tell the truth about what happened. That's all I'm asking." Briggs sipped his coffee. "The truth," he said slowly, like he was tasting the word. "My wife was assaulted. She was sitting in a restaurant, not breaking any law, and she was humiliated and struck. I came in and protected her. I didn't attack anyone. That's what happened, and you know that's what happened." Devers, the youngest of the three, shifted slightly. Marcus noticed it. He filed it away. The way I remember it, Briggs said, your man put his hands on an officer. I stopped your man from striking my wife a second time. That's your version. That's what happened. Briggs smiled. Not warmly. Mr. Carter. You know what I think? I think a man with your kind of money is used to having things go his way. I think you walked into that restaurant, and when things didn't go your way, you reacted. And I think right now you're sitting in my living room, because the people who usually make problems like this disappear for you can't make this one disappear. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I have lost significant business deals because of those videos, he said. My wife was assaulted, and the men who assaulted her are on social media playing victim. I'm asking you, man to man, to correct this. Briggs put down his mug. We might be willing to help, he said. A beat. Help how? Marcus asked. Well, Briggs leaned forward, elbows on knees, and his voice took on the particular tone of a man revealing something he's been holding in his mouth for a while, savoring. A man like you, 400 million, is it? That kind of wealth can accomplish a lot. Could take care of a lot of people. Change a lot of lives. He paused deliberately. You give us what we need, and maybe we feel differently about what we remember. The room was very quiet. You're asking me for money, Marcus said. I'm asking you to invest in the right outcome, Briggs said. And if I don't? Briggs sat back. He picked up his coffee again. He shrugged, the shrug of a man who has already decided the answer before he asked the question. Then, I think the situation continues to develop, he said, in ways that might become very costly for you. Legally. Publicly. Marcus looked at each of the three men. Devers was staring at the floor. Holt was expressionless. Briggs was watching him with those pale eyes, patient and completely comfortable. Marcus stood up. He straightened his jacket. He looked at Briggs one more time. I'm not going to give you anything, he said. Not $1. Not 1 cent. He walked to the door. Think carefully about that, Briggs said behind him. Marcus walked out into the morning air and got in his car and sat with both hands on the steering wheel. His jaw was tight. His chest was burning. He breathed through his nose, long, slow, his mother's way. Then he called Mia. They want money, he said when she answered. Silence on her end. How much? She asked finally. They didn't name a number. They left it open. Which tells me they want everything. Another silence. Then Mia said, very quietly, Marcus. They were never going to do the right thing. Not for free. Possibly not at all. Her voice was even, but underneath it he could hear the things she was working hard to hold back. What are we going to do? We're going to fight, he said. He didn't have a plan yet. But he knew that much. He drove home, and neither of them said much for the rest of that day. But that evening, while Mia sat reading, Marcus called his attorney. He told him everything. He told him about the restaurant. He told him about the visit. He told him about the offer. His attorney listened without interrupting. Then he said, Marcus, I want you prepared for what may come next. Men like this, when you say no, they don't back down. They escalate. I think there's a chance they may move against you legally, preemptively, to gain leverage. Let them try, Marcus said. I mean it, his attorney said. Be ready. Marcus didn't sleep that night at all. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the meeting he'd had with the officers in Briggs's living room had ended a different way once he left. Briggs had locked the front door and turned to face Holt and Devers, and something had shifted in him. The performance was over. The carefully managed expression dropped. He said no, Devers said. He was the youngest. 28. He had been shifted, unsettled, since the night at Aurelio's. He had stood there while Nia Carter was slapped, and something in his chest had gone wrong in a way that hadn't righted itself yet. What happens now? Now we use what we have, Briggs said. He pulled out his phone and opened a folder. Inside were screenshots, comments, posts, threads, all cataloged and organized with a neatness that told you he had been building this for days. He turned the phone so Holt and Devers could see. The internet already believes he assaulted us, Briggs said. 40,000 shares. News channels picking it up. His deal's falling apart. He put the phone down. We go to a lawyer. We sue him for assault, property damage, the uniform, emotional distress, and interference with official duty. We go to civil court, not criminal, because criminal needs a higher threshold and they'd investigate us too carefully. Civil gives us more flexibility. Holt nodded slowly. He was older than the others, quieter, more calculating in the way people are when they've done something enough times to know how it moves. How much do we ask for? Holt said. Enough to set us up for life, Briggs said. Given his public profile, given the optics, given what his lawyers will want to avoid going to trial, they'll settle. They'll want this quiet. That's what wealthy people do. They settle. Devers was quiet. He was looking at his own hands. And the actual truth, he said. Both men looked at him. I mean, Devers said carefully, we were the ones who walked into that restaurant and... The actual truth, Briggs said, cutting him off with a voice like a door closing, is what we need it to be. You have a baby coming in 3 months. You want to be the man who throws away his career and his pension and his freedom defending a billionaire who grabbed your wrist? Or do you want to be set up for the rest of your life? Devers looked away. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. They hired a lawyer 2 days later. A man named Feldstein who specialized in civil suits against public figures and had the kind of internet presence that told you he enjoyed being on camera. He called a press conference to announce the lawsuit. He stood at a podium and talked about the dignity of law enforcement and the dangerous precedent of the wealthy thinking themselves above accountability. Cameras flashed. Microphones extended. The internet absorbed it like it had been waiting. The headlines were immediate and brutal. Officers file civil suit against billionaire Marcus Carter. Cops say Carter assault was premeditated, seek multi-million-dollar compensation. The night Marcus Carter crossed the line, social media went sideways. The voices who had been mildly skeptical before now hardened. People who had left small windows of doubt open slammed them shut. The narrative had calcified into something that felt permanent, and every attempt Marcus or Nia made to complicate it was met with accusations of spin. Someone made a meme of Marcus. He saw it on a Saturday morning. It had his face layered over an image of a cartoon bull in a china shop, and it had been shared 300,000 times. Nia put her hand over his when he showed her. Don't look anymore, she said. I need to understand what we're facing, he said. You need to sleep, she said. You need to be clear-headed. You need to be the person who wins this, and you can't be that person if you keep feeding yourself poison. She was right. She was almost always right. He closed the app. But that night, lying in the dark, he thought about those officers sitting in Briggs's living room planning this. Turning a night that had already been cruel into something weaponized. Using his wife's humiliation as the foundation for their own enrichment. He thought about Nia's bruise. He thought about the juice running down her face. He thought about what it must have felt like to sit in that restaurant, not having done a single thing wrong, and have the world turned against you by men with badges and phones. The anger that moved through him in the dark was the cold kind. The kind that doesn't burn quickly and go out. The kind that stays. He would need it. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. It came by certified mail. His housekeeper brought it to him in his study, where he was on a call with Priscilla about the quarterly review. He saw the return address on the envelope, Feldstein and Associates, and held up one finger to pause the conversation. He opened it. The papers were thick. 23 pages. He read the first page twice, then set it down. Marcus. Priscilla's voice from the phone. I'll call you back, he said. He sat at his desk and read all 23 pages. He read them the way you read something that is trying to dismantle you, carefully, completely, with the particular alertness of a man who refuses to be blindsided twice. The suit alleged assault of 3 law enforcement officers. Intentional destruction of government property, specifically 1 torn uniform, emotional distress, interference with official police duty, and, in a final paragraph that felt almost theatrical in its audacity, public intimidation by means of wealth and social influence. The damages requested totaled $14 million. He put the papers down. He picked them up. He put them down again. He called his attorney, James Okafor, a man who had been his legal counsel for 11 years and had seen Marcus through 4 significant business disputes, 2 IRS audits, and a hostile acquisition attempt. James was not a man given to alarm. He was still and precise and steady in the way of people who have made peace with complexity. "I've been expecting this," James said when Marcus called. "Since you told me about the meeting with Briggs, I knew they'd move this way." $14 million, Marcus said. "They know you have it," James said. "They're betting you'd rather pay than go through a trial." "I won't pay them a cent." "I know. So we go to trial." James paused. "Marcus, I have to be honest with you. What we have right now is limited. We have your testimony. We have Nia's testimony. What we don't have is physical evidence. No video from inside the restaurant that captures the full incident. No independent witness who has come forward." "What about the other diners? The couple who recognized me?" "I've had my team try to contact them. The woman gave us a brief statement, but she says she's not willing to testify in court. Her husband works in financial services, and they're worried about exposure." Marcus was quiet. "What about the restaurant staff?" "That's your best avenue," James said. "The waiters were there. The manager was there. They saw everything. If we could get even one to stand up and corroborate your account, then get them. We've reached out. So far, no one is willing. They're afraid, Marcus. Going up against 3 police officers in a formal legal proceeding is not a small thing for people who have jobs to protect and lives that can be complicated." Marcus rubbed his face. "James, I need to know the worst case." A pause. "Worst case," James said carefully, "is that we go to trial with testimony only. They present their video evidence and their account, and the judge or jury weighs credibility. In that scenario, they may have the stronger position on paper. And if found liable beyond the financial penalty, there could be implications. Criminal referral in the worst case, though that's unlikely given the civil framing." He paused again. "But Marcus, we're going to fight this. And I need you to start thinking about anyone who was in that restaurant. Anyone at all." After the call, Marcus walked to the living room. Nia was on the couch. She had heard the call. She always heard his calls, whether she was meant to or not. 11 years of marriage, and she could read the shape of a conversation from 2 rooms away. "We go to court," she said. It wasn't a question. "We go to court." She nodded. She pulled her knees to her chest. She looked out the window for a moment, and Marcus watched her process it. Watched the emotions move through her face in the order they always did. Shock, then grief, then fury, then the particular stillness that in Nia meant she had arrived at action. "Tell me what you need," she said. "I need a witness," he said. "Someone who was there, and will say what they saw." Nia looked at him. "Then we find one," she said. The courtroom was not the dramatic, cathedral high space of the movies. It was a beige room with fluorescent lights that buzzed just barely at the edge of hearing, rows of dark wooden benches, and a judge's bench elevated just enough to make the point. Judge Patricia Walcott was 61 years old and had been on the bench for 19 years. Her face was composed and precise. She had the eyes of someone who had been lied to professionally for nearly 2 decades and had developed a very accurate internal detector for it. Briggs, Holt, and Dever sat at the plaintiff's table with their attorney Feldstein, who wore a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They were composed. Briggs in particular sat with a posture that suggested complete confidence, the way you sit when you have prepared the room in advance. Marcus and James sat at the defense table. Nia was in the gallery directly behind Marcus, close enough that he could feel her presence without turning around. Feldstein gave his opening statement. It was good. He was practiced, measured, told a story of officers doing their duty and being physically overpowered by a man who believed the rules did not apply to him. He showed the video, the 17-second clip, on a screen at the front of the room. He played it twice. He let it sit. Then James gave the defense statement. He spoke about Nia's bruise, about the sequence of events the video deliberately omitted. He spoke with control and precision. But even Marcus, listening, could hear the vulnerability in it. The reaching, the here is what you didn't see, the defense built on words without architecture. The officers testified. Briggs was the best of the three. He was calm, empathetic, careful. He described the evening in a version of events that was just close enough to real to be convincing. He described Marcus as aggressive, volatile, threatening. He touched his collar when he mentioned the torn uniform. He looked at the judge with the eyes of a man who had been through something difficult and was trying very hard not to be bitter about it. Holt corroborated. Devers corroborated. James cross-examined all three. He was sharp. He found contradictions in timing and language. But without physical evidence to anchor them to something concrete, the contradictions floated. When the first day of testimony closed, Judge Walcott set down her pen and looked over the courtroom. "Mr. Carter," she said. Her voice was even, without judgment, but carrying the weight of what had to be said. "Your testimony is detailed and your account is consistent. However, this court requires more than testimony in a case of this complexity. The plaintiff has presented a video record. You have presented your words and your wife's words. That is not, at present, a balanced evidentiary contest."
She paused.
"I am giving you until our next session to present additional evidence or a credible independent witness. If you cannot do so, I will be obligated to weigh the evidence as it stands, and I must tell you directly, as it stands, the weight favors the plaintiff." She looked at him steadily. "Find me something, Mr. Carter, or come prepared for an adverse ruling." The gavel came down. Marcus sat very still. Behind him, he heard Nia exhale a long, carefully controlled breath that told him everything she was holding back. He turned and looked at her. Her eyes were red, not from crying, from the effort of not crying. "We find the witness," she said. He nodded. He had 2 days. He went back to Aurelio's the next morning. He went alone, without James, without Nia. He needed it to be human. He needed to walk into that building as a man asking for help, not a billionaire with an attorney and an agenda. The restaurant opened at 11. He was there at 10:55. The manager, a slim Italian man named Vincent who had worked there for 12 years and had the expression of someone perpetually burdened by the gap between his establishment's elegance and the chaos human beings routinely introduced into it, met Marcus at the door. He recognized him. Of course he did. "Mr. Carter," he said. He held the door. "Please come in." They sat at a table. Marcus explained the situation. He explained it cleanly, without performance, laying out what the judge had said, what he needed, and what it would mean if he didn't get it. Vincent listened. He steepled his fingers. He looked at the tablecloth. "What I saw that evening," Vincent said carefully, "was disturbing. I am not going to tell you it wasn't." "Then say that in court," Marcus said. Vincent shook his head slowly. "Mr. Carter, I have 14 employees here. I have a liquor license. I have health inspections. I have relationships with the city that my family has spent 30 years building." He looked up. "If I stand against 3 police officers in court, those relationships become complicated. I have children. I have a responsibility to this business." He shook his head again. "I am sorry. I genuinely am. But I cannot." Marcus thanked him. He stood. He went to each of the 4 waiters who had been on shift that night, one by one, in the back of the restaurant. Each of them listened to him with the careful, pained attention of people who wanted to help and had already decided they couldn't. One young woman, a server named Angie, had tears in her eyes when she said no. She apologized twice. She touched his arm, but she shook her head. He thanked all of them. He walked back through the restaurant toward the exit, and it took everything he had to keep his head up. He had not felt this specific kind of defeat before, not the loss of a business deal, not a financial setback, not the ordinary bruises of ambitious life. This was different. This was the world looking at something true and turning its back on it because the truth was inconvenient. He pushed through the front door into the morning light. He stood on the sidewalk. His car was 20 feet away. He pulled out his keys. "Mr. Carter." The voice was young, uncertain. He turned. A young man was standing near the entrance, holding a coffee cup with both hands. He was white, mid-20s, with a kind of face that looked like it hadn't quite decided what it was going to be yet. He was dressed simply, jeans, a light jacket, clean sneakers. He looked like he had been waiting, and that he had almost talked himself out of this several times in the past 5 minutes. Yes, Marcus said. I was here, the young man said. That night. I was here with my girlfriend. I saw everything. Marcus was very still. I'm not going to lie to you, the young man continued. He spoke quickly, like he was afraid he'd stop if he slowed down. I want to help you. What those men did, to your wife, and then to you, it was wrong. I know it was wrong. I've been thinking about it every day. He stopped. He swallowed. But I'm 24 years old, and I'm my parents' only child, and I've seen what happens to people who go against police in court. I can't stand up as a witness for you. I'm sorry. I know it's not what you need. Marcus held the young man's gaze. He kept his voice neutral because he did not want the young man to feel the enormous weight of this moment falling on him. I understand, Marcus said. The young man nodded. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. He held it out. But that doesn't mean I can't help you, he said. Marcus looked at the drive. The restaurant has cameras, the young man said. 4 of them. I'm a tech contractor. I've done work here, security system maintenance, 3 months ago. I still had access credentials. He paused. I pulled the full footage from that night. All 4 angles. Everything. From when your wife sat down to when you walked out. Marcus looked at the drive in the young man's hand. He could feel his heart beating. Everything, Marcus said quietly. Everything, the young man confirmed. Every second of what they did to her. Every second of what happened when you walked in. And the uniforms, Mr. Carter, on camera you can see exactly how those uniforms got torn. It wasn't you. Marcus reached out and took the drive. He held it for a moment in his palm, this small, light, plastic thing that contained the truth. It weighed nothing. It weighed everything. What's your name? Marcus asked. Tyler, the young man said. Tyler. Marcus extended his hand. Thank you. Tyler shook it. I hope it helps. I really do. Marcus looked at him for a moment, at the honesty in this young man's face, the genuine discomfort, the effort it had taken to come out here this morning and do the right thing in the only way he felt he could. It will, Marcus said. He got in his car. He called James before he'd even started the engine. I have the restaurant footage, he said. Full recording. All 4 cameras. There was a pause on James's end. A long one. And then, quietly, God bless the person who gave you that. The second session was scheduled for 10 a.m. Marcus arrived early. Nia was beside him, her hand in his as they walked into the courthouse. She had not slept much either. Neither of them had. But they had watched the footage together the night before, sitting close on the study couch, and when it was over, Nia had pressed her forehead against his shoulder and let out a breath that seemed to carry 6 days of held-in weight. It's all there, she had whispered. All of it, he'd said. James had moved quickly. He filed the footage with the court the previous evening, submitted the authentication documentation, and prepared his presentation. He had spent the night building what would be shown this morning with the careful architecture of a man who knew he had exactly one opportunity to get this right. Briggs, Holt, and Devers walked in together and took their seats. Feldstein was beside them, polished, untroubled, still wearing certainty the way he wore his suit, like something he'd had tailored. He had not seen the footage yet. Neither had they. Judge Walcott entered. The room stood. She sat. The room sat. Mr. Okafor, she said. You indicated you have new evidence to present. Yes, Your Honor, James said. He stood smoothly. The defense would like to submit Exhibit D, security camera footage from Aurelio's restaurant covering the full duration of the incident in question. For camera angles. Authenticated and time-stamped. Feldstein's head turned. His expression shifted. Not panic, not yet, but the first careful flicker of something recalculating. He leaned toward Briggs and said something quiet. Briggs's jaw tightened. Proceed, Judge Walcott said. The screen at the front of the room lit up. The footage began. Camera angle 1, the entrance. Time-stamped. Clear. Camera angle 2, the main dining floor. The table where Nia sat. The light from the candle. The juice in the glass. It played. The room watched as 3 officers entered. Watched as they stopped in the center of the floor. Watched as the words were spoken. Though there was no audio, the body language was unmistakable. Watched as every black patron in the restaurant rose. Watched as one woman did not. Watched as Briggs walked to her table. Watched as he picked up her glass and poured it over her head. The sound in the courtroom was involuntary, a collective intake of breath, a murmur quickly suppressed. Someone in the gallery made a sound that might have been a word. Watched as she stood and spoke. Watched as Briggs's hand came up and came across her face. The room went completely silent. Camera angle 3 caught Marcus entering. Caught the moment he saw. Caught the way he moved, not aggressive, not charging, but urgent, purposeful. The movement of a man arriving to protect. Caught him placing himself between Nia and the officer. Caught the second officer's hand rise again. Caught Marcus catch the wrist. Camera angle 4, the clearest angle, from above, showed what happened to the uniform. It showed Officer Holt reaching forward and grabbing Marcus by the lapel. It showed Holt stepping back and stumbling into a table. It showed Holt's collar catching on the edge of a chair. It showed the fabric tearing. Not from Marcus's hand, but from the force of Holt's own movement. It was 2 minutes and 47 seconds of footage. James stopped the playback. The courtroom was very, very quiet. Judge Walcott sat back. She looked at the screen for a moment after it went dark, the way you look at something you need a second with. Then she looked at the plaintiff's table. Briggs was staring at the table's surface. Holt was looking at the wall. Devers, and this Marcus noticed, had his hand over his mouth and his eyes were red. Feldstein was writing something on his pad with the intensity of a man who needed to appear busy. Mr. Feldstein, Judge Walcott said. Her voice was level. The way a flat road is level before a cliff. Your Honor, Feldstein began. I am not asking you a question, she said. I am looking at evidence that directly and completely contradicts every material claim made by your clients. She paused. I am also looking at evidence of assault committed upon Mrs. Carter by at least one of the plaintiff officers. Of humiliation inflicted upon restaurant patrons on the basis of their appearance. Of false testimony given under oath in this courtroom. She stopped. She let that sit. She turned to the 3 officers. I want to speak to you as people, not as litigants, she said. Not because you deserve that courtesy at this moment, but because I believe in the function of this court to be honest about what it has just seen. She looked at them one by one. What this footage shows is a sequence of events in which 3 uniformed officers entered a restaurant, issued unlawful commands to patrons based solely on the color of their skin, physically assaulted a woman who had committed no offense, and then, when held accountable by her husband, fabricated a narrative designed to reverse the harm and profit from it. She stopped again. There is no version of this that I will look past. She straightened her papers. This civil suit is dismissed. With prejudice. She looked at the district attorney's representative who had been present as an observer in the gallery. I am referring this matter for criminal investigation. Officers Briggs, Holt, and Devers, you are remanded. The gavel came down. Everything happened at once. Marshals moved to the plaintiff's table. Briggs stood, the composure he'd carried into the room finally cracking, finally splitting along the pressure line that had been there all along, hidden under the confidence. He said something. Marcus couldn't hear it over the noise of the room. Holt stood and let himself be guided. Devers was already crying. His hands were at his sides. He was crying without trying to stop it. Nia was beside Marcus. Her hand found his under the table. She squeezed it hard. He turned to look at her. She was not crying. Her chin was up. Her eyes were bright and full and alive. She looked like someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side, knowing what they were made of. It's over, she said. He pulled her into him. His arms went around her and he held her in that beige courtroom under those fluorescent lights with the sound of the room still moving around them, and for one long moment he let himself feel the full weight of what they had carried. The bruise, the juice, the videos, the canceled deals, the sleepless nights, the crumbling of what he had believed about how the world worked, and the painful, hard-won reconstruction of something sturdier. He breathed. She breathed. Outside, in an hour, the footage would be on every news channel and every phone in the country. The apologies would come in floods. The deals would slowly, cautiously, begin to return. The internet, which had condemned him with such enthusiasm, would perform its reversal with equal enthusiasm and no acknowledgement of the distance between the two. But right now, in this moment, Marcus Carter held his wife in a courtroom and felt something clean move through him. The truth had been patient. His mother was right about that. 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning, Marcus Carter drove back to Aurelio's. He drove himself. No driver. He had a particular relationship with driving himself to the places that mattered. In the back seat of the car were two things: an envelope and a key, single, silver, attached to a small tag. He parked in front of the restaurant and sat for a moment. Since the verdict, the world had moved the way it tends to after something undeniable is shown to it. Fast, loud, and in the complete opposite direction. The footage had gone so viral that the original officer's video was now buried under layers of the real one. News anchors who had used phrases like billionaire assault were now using phrases like shocking police misconduct. The public figure with 200,000 followers who had retweeted the accusation 40,000 times had posted a 10-paragraph apology. It had gotten 8,000 likes. Nobody pointed out the math. The Meridian Group had called. They were, if Marcus was willing, if he understood their position, if he could see that they had been acting on incomplete information, very interested in resuming discussions. Marcus had listened to the full message twice. He had called Priscilla. "What do you think?" he'd asked. "I think," Priscilla said, "that you are in a position to set any terms you want." He'd smiled at that. The other deals had not all returned. 2 had not come back. He filed that knowledge away without bitterness. Those were choices those companies had made, and he understood now that information about who people were under pressure was valuable. You didn't have to be angry to use it wisely. Nia had gone back to her own work. She was a physician, an emergency medicine doctor, and she had taken 2 weeks and then gone back to the hospital, where she had spent 15 years building a reputation built entirely on the merit of what she did in a room with patients. She had walked into her hospital on her first day back, and 3 nurses had been waiting at the entrance to hug her. She had told Marcus about it over dinner that evening, and he had watched her face as she described it, the brightness in her eyes, the way it moved through her, and he had thought, this woman, this specific, remarkable, unbending woman, whatever else this has cost us, she walked through it carrying herself, and that is the thing I will always be most proud of. He got out of the car. He went inside Aurelio's. Vincent was at the host stand. When he saw Marcus, something moved through his face, complicated and honest, and not trying to hide itself. He had publicly apologized. He had given a statement to the press confirming what he had seen. He had done it after the footage appeared, after the protection of anonymity was no longer needed, after it was safe. Marcus had noticed the timing. He had not commented on it publicly. "Mr. Carter," Vincent said. "Vincent." Marcus shook his hand. "Is Tyler here?" Vincent nodded. "I called him this morning, when you said you were coming. He's in the back." Tyler appeared from the kitchen corridor a moment later, still in his jacket, the same clean sneakers. He looked at Marcus with the cautious expression of someone who was hoping for something, but had told himself not to expect it. "Tyler," Marcus said. "Mr. Carter." Marcus extended his hand. Tyler shook it. Then Marcus handed him the key. Tyler looked at it. "What is this?" "A house," Marcus said simply. 3 bedrooms. Good neighborhood. Deed is in your name. There's no mortgage." Tyler stared at the key. He opened his mouth. He closed it. Marcus handed him the envelope. "That's money for something of your own," Marcus said. "Business. School. Savings. Whatever makes sense for you. Don't argue with me about it. You gave me the truth when you could have walked past me on that sidewalk and nobody would have ever known. That has a value that I can't calculate, so I'm not going to try. This is the closest I can get." Tyler's eyes were wet. He looked at the key in his hand. He looked at the envelope. He looked at Marcus. His voice broke slightly. He cleared it. "I just did what was right." "That's exactly it," Marcus said. "You just did what was right. When it was hard. When you didn't have to. He paused. That's not nothing, Tyler. That's not nothing at all. The workers in the restaurant had gathered, quietly, in the dining room. The servers, the bussers, the kitchen staff. Angie, the young woman who had touched his arm and said no. She was standing near the pass-through window with both hands pressed flat against her chest. Her eyes were shining. Marcus noticed them. He turned and looked at the room. He didn't say anything angry. He didn't perform forgiveness or make anyone feel small for the choice they'd made. He just looked at them, these people who had been afraid, who had made the human decision to protect themselves, whose caution he understood even if it had cost him. He nodded.
Once. Gently.
Several of them nodded back. Vincent said, voice low, "We're sorry, Marcus. All of us." "I know," Marcus said. "Take care of Tyler." He turned and walked to the door. He stopped at the threshold and looked back at the restaurant, at the corner table, their table, the white tablecloth, the candle, the empty chairs. He thought about Nia sitting there in her red dress, laughing. He thought about the version of that evening that was supposed to exist, the quiet dinner, the juice, the long, easy conversation about Ghana in the summer. He thought, we will come back here. We will sit at that table and have that dinner, and drink that juice and laugh. They were not going to let one night of cruelty become the permanent definition of this place. He pushed through the door into the sunlight. He called Nia on the way to the car. "It's done," he said when she answered. "How does it feel?" she asked. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, the spring air moving around him, the city doing what cities do, all that indifferent, beautiful forward motion. "Like the beginning of something," he said. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Come home." "I'm coming," he said. He got in the car and drove toward her. Behind him, through the restaurant window, Tyler was still standing with the key in his hand and the envelope against his chest, looking at it like something he hadn't expected the world to offer him, like something that required a minute to become real. The workers around him were smiling, and the table in the corner table, sat clean and set and ready, waiting for the people it had always belonged to. You have rights, and knowing them matters. Nia refusing to stand or kneel wasn't stubbornness, it was constitutional awareness. No law enforcement officer can lawfully order people to stand based solely on skin color. The story teaches that unlawful commands don't become lawful just because they come from someone in uniform. If this story moved you, if Nia's courage gave you chills, if Marcus's pain felt real, if Tyler's quiet act of bravery made you believe in people again, then you already know the story deserves to be seen.
Subscribe.
Like. Comment.
Share.
Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.